Good evening, I am Steve and this is my rock and metal life, and it's been a little while since I put something out there. It's been probably one of the better summers of my life as far as travel and activity, and I'm sitting here today. I haven't been to a show since the Jeff Tate show a couple months back, and I got no tickets for anything right now, and part of that is maybe my long dreaded my premonition finally coming true that the scene's drying up a little bit. Some of it is maybe don't want to spend the money and travel far and wide to see some of these guys. But I'm here tonight to talk about a band that sits in an odd place in my mind, and as a fan or someone who appreciates music and their music. I'm going to talk about the Kinks. And this is clearly a British invasion band, burst on the scene in 1963, and they went through a lot of twists and turns in their career, and I'm going to start where I jumped into the mix, which was the late 70s, and first of all, it goes without saying that Van Halen's my favorite band. Van Halen's first record is, high atop the mountain for me. What I think of Edward Van Halen is pretty well chronicled. Just about everything the guy does just hits me right between the eyes. So obviously on that first record with You Really Got Me, here's how I know who the Kinks are, because they've got You Really Got Me, and it's kind of a, for me, looking back, it's kind of a mind bender that that riff that they had in 1963. That's pretty early in the game for heavy rock, and so in my mind, I know they did You Really Got Me. I know they did All Day and All the Night, which is kind of similar. It's kind of a heavy riff that the song's built around. And then a few years later, I learn of Lola, and, okay, this sounds different than what I know. I never went back and bought those first few Kinks records, which did so good for them early on. But anyway, so what I know of the Kinks is that, hey, heavy rock pioneers, in my mind. And so about this time, when I'm first getting into music, the Kinks are mounting a comeback. They went away and come back, so to speak, and I'll go over that. But where I got in was 1979's Low Budget, and they had been on hard times. And I think the album prior to 1977 Sleepwalker, I think that was where they got back in good favor and, started making some progress as far as, selling records and being popular. So, oh, and you know what? The one before was Misfits. So there was Sleepwalker in 77, 78 was Misfits. And so, hey, here they are. And I'll kind of set the stage for where they were at that point. But me, 1979, 14-year-old me, I'm hearing stuff on the Low Budget record, and Catch Me Now I'm Falling is a song that got played on the radio, and then Low Budget, the title track, I had heard that, but the one that was on the radio the most that I heard, that I identified with them not being from way back when was Wish I Could Fly Like Superman, which is a song that, like a lot of bands did, they played to a disco beat. And it's Ray Davies and Dave Davies, just like they always were. And here they are with jumping on, because disco's so huge, just like Kiss did with I Was Made for Loving You, Rod Stewart, Do You Think I'm Sexy, that kind of thing. And I guess it was a minor hit, and here they are, they seem relevant again, I guess. And so my journey starts there, you know, the Van Halen reference that goes all the way back to, I said 63, I think it's 64, with You Really Got Me. And moving forward, today, all I have of them is, I've got this is a compilation, and this is a live album of essentially the era that I know, okay? So when I was in high school, after Low Budget came out, they came out in 1981 with a record called Give the People What They Want. And this had a song, Destroyer, that I think, you know, I think that should be played on classic rock radio all the time. And it's not. It's basically lost to history. But these are some good songs for that time period. There's a lot of good guitar. There's clever Ray Davies lyrics, all that stuff. And they got Give the People What They Want. They've got Around the Dial. They've got Destroyer. Some really good songs on this record. And this thing gets them back. They actually, Low Budget went gold. And Low Budget got up to number 11 in the U.S. This thing got up to number 15 in the U.S. So now I'm of age to where I'm paying attention. And to me, you know, hey, the Kinks back on the map. Just like at the time, the Stones, you know, still plugging away. The Who, you know, still plugging away. 83, my senior year, they come out with State of Confusion. And that, I don't know. I've listened to that quite a bit, you know, leading up to making this video. That one might be better than Give the People What They Want. And I think we're talking about, you know, I'm going to have to go all the way back to the beginning and explain Ray Davies's, you know, his penchant for concept albums and everything. And even some albums that didn't end up being concept albums. They had a concept running through them. So State of Confusion has Come Dancing, that's what they titled the compilation here. That was a big hit. That was an MTV video success for them. The song State of Confusion, that's pretty good. Don't Forget to Dance, a ballad. So we're going to talk a little bit more as we go on. And then the next thing they did was Word of Mouth, and that had a really big song on it. Well, it had a video for a song called Do It Again, which is kind of standard Kinks fare at that time. Good song, nothing special. But Living on a Thin Line is a song that was associated with the Sopranos. And so a lot of people know that song, might not even know it's the Kinks, for all I know. So that was, Word of Mouth was 1984, so it seems like the Kinks are kind of rolling. Word of Mouth, you know, didn't get certified, neither did State of Confusion. So they had a couple of back-to-back gold records, and then a couple of records that did good, and MTV helped them out a little bit. And then they had two more. They had one in 86 called Think Visual that I know nothing about at this point. And then in 89 they have one called UK Jive, same thing. I haven't gone that far yet. And then, you know, kind of like that, it was over. They came out with a record in 93 called Phobia. They essentially broke up in 96, was the last time they played together. And, you know, so I got this huge gap in my knowledge. I know the stuff that came out late 70s, early to mid 80s. I'm aware of the absolutely huge songs. So let's go back. 1964, the first record that has You Really Got Me on it, it's just called The Kinks. And, you know, I'm going to throw some of this out there, and I don't know if it's going to get pulled down or not. I don't think so. But, you know, I started playing the first Kinks record, and along the way, my son gave me a link to a really good look back at the Kinks, basically, you know, it's pretty much the whole career, starting with this record, The Kinks, and what Ray Davies is doing with his lyrics and, you know, his ideas and stuff like that. And I'm going to link that down below. It's it's by a guy named Academic Agent, and he does some really long, involved, good stuff on music. People like him make it easy for people like me to fill in my gaps. So while I was listening to some of these older records, I happened upon that because my son pointed me there, and that's a good thing to fill in the knowledge. And some of it's just his opinion, but it's it gives you a pretty good chronology. So here's the record that has You Really Got Me. Here's the kind of stuff that's on the record around it. This is a song called So Mystifying, and there's a riff. So that's Dave Davies singing, and it's pretty British Invasion, pretty of its time, and I can see how it'd be popular. I personally I like a bunch of old stuff, and I love Elvis and Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran, Jerry Lee Lewis. Those are some of my all-time favorites, and I can listen to them at any time. Some of this early to mid 60s stuff, I just don't get into that sound. And I see the progression of where we're going, and, it's not going to be too long before we have Led Zeppelin. We had to go through here to get there, and I totally appreciate that. But just this sound, this, whatever that is from that time, I just don't care for it that much. And when the Stones were doing it, I didn't care for that like I do the Sticky Fingers record, the early Who stuff, even the song My Generation, but some of that pop centric stuff, I just don't care for it like I do Who's Next and records like that. Here's another one that really I don't know how big of a hit this was. It's a 1 minute and 49 second song, but this, to me, this is the band that's giving us You Really Got Me and All Day and All of the Night, and then they're also doing this. It's called I Took My Baby Home. I mean, fun, could be in a surf, a beach movie, but again, I'm aware of Lola. I'm aware of the heavy stuff in the 80s, and this is kind of an eye opener to me. So, from humble beginnings, I guess, but they did real well between I don't know, 64 and probably, I don't know, 71. They were doing pretty good. They were charting in the U.S. They were kind of falling off. They had, between 64 and 67, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 records. In 1968, they came out with the Kinks, or the Village Green Preservation Society. And, a lot of what I've read and that Academic Agent said, that's pretty brilliant stuff. 1969 is Arthur. And this is a concept album, and this is Ray Davies throughout the career. He wrote songs and albums about his family and his, British society, British, the class structure and things like that. And then Arthur, I'm probably going to mess this up, but I want to say Arthur was his sister's husband. And, there's a whole story of the record. And then 1970, they came out with Lola versus Power Man and the Money Go Round Part 1. Okay? So Lola versus Power Man and the Money Go Round Part 1. And there was never a Part 2. So this is, a bunch of stuff tied together, but it's got Lola, which to me, I put Lola way up at the top of their, I think it's clever, I think it's catchy, I think it's a sing-along, I think it's, it caught people at the right place, right time. And the funny thing is, they kind of went downhill after that. And if I'm looking at, where is it? They kind of fell off the map. In 1973, they went through this theatrical period. And, gosh, it's just, this is stuff I'm not familiar with, but their sound got to be, you know, it's not anything that's on the radio. You know, it's almost going to not appeal to anybody except for Ray Davies and whoever thinks like he thinks. And they put out some stuff that didn't do very good at all. They did Muswell Hillbillies in '71, and that was another story about the family. They moved to this place called Muswell, and you know, it describes a lot of the life there. '72, they had a record called Everybody's in Showbiz, and I believe that was like half live and half recorded stuff, and it's got the song Celluloid Heroes, which is a ballad about old Hollywood, and I think that's brilliant. I learned of that song from Joan Jett's covers album, which was called The Hit List, and she did an absolutely brilliant job of it. But again, that's 1972. That's the Kinks doing that. And they came out with Preservation Act 1 and 2 in '73 and '74, and the Kinks present a soap opera. The Kinks present Schoolboys in Disgrace, and then, you know, it's not till '77 they do Sleepwalker. And then '78 you get Misfits, which is, you know, brings you right up to where I come into the picture with a low budget. So I know that's a rapid fire run through there, but basically they started out hit makers, and within that you got some innovative heavy guitar stuff. They went more progressive, I guess you'd say. Did the concept records, they did the theatrical stuff, got way away from the mainstream. They got to where they weren't doing what the top 40 people were doing. They weren't doing what Led Zeppelin was doing. They weren't doing what Aerosmith was doing. They're the Kinks, and they're out there putting out records and not really getting a whole lot for it from what I can gather here. And then that big late career comeback. You know, I remember, and I've talked about this in other videos, when Give the People What They Want came out in '81, and, you know, I don't know, that's when the record came out, but I remember seeing a thing on, like, Entertainment Tonight or something. There was talk about this huge, you know, boy, what's old is new again, and there's a bunch of '60s bands, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash got back out there with Daylight again. The Moody Blues had a big comeback. You know, the Stones always did their, you know, they seem like they were always way up here as far as popularity, but they ebbed and flowed a little bit. And then when they get to Tattoo You, they're monsters again. The Who, they announced that they were going to tour for the last time after Keith Moon died, after Who Are You? And then they did that record, It's Hard, and they toured supposedly for the final time. Yet I saw them live in '89, which was the Kids Are Alright 25th year anniversary. But anyway, so the Kinks maybe rode in on that wave. Maybe MTV helped them out to some extent, but they got it going again. And then, you know, they had, what was that, 79 to 84. I think they're probably like respected, you know, they're 20 years in when you get to 84. You know, grand old men of the genre, I guess, which is, you know, still kind of new at that point, you know. And I think Ray Davies, like, he may not be the greatest singer, but as far as like his voice and range and all that stuff, but he really conveys the emotion of the pictures he's trying to paint. And so I think he's fantastic. Now, him and his brother, Dave, are the only two that made it all the way through. If you look at the band members, you got Ray and Dave all the way through, and then from '63 to '84, they had a drummer. and then 63, the bass was a little more complicated. They had 63 to 66, they had one guy. Also in 66, another guy came in. The first guy comes back in 66 and goes to 69. And then 69 to 76, that second guy comes back. Okay, so kind of, you know, a fair amount of stability up till 76. And then the keyboard slot, you know, they didn't have keyboards until 70. And then that was a, you know, large cast of characters. And then, you know, when the original drummer, Mick Avery, he was done in 84, and then they got Bob Henrit was the next guy, and he was there till the end. So they only had 2 drummers the whole time. They had a few bass players and keyboard players. But I remember, like, on the State of Confusion record, the album cover is the 5 guys in the band all running different directions, like from a center. They're all fanning out, you know, and you can see Ray Davies, like, the most prominent, coming at you. And he said that record there, which was State of Confusion, was 83. He said that pretty well depicted the band at that time. They were all going in different directions. So it probably wasn't going to last too much longer anyway. So I guess to sum it all up, you could have asked me any time over the last, you know, 40 years, you like the Kinks? Yeah. You a fan of the Kinks? Yeah. You know, I knew very little about them considering how much they had out there. And the more I dig into them, they're really intriguing. I've gone back and listened to a few records besides the first one. Unlike the Stones, when I did my deep look at the Stones, I bought Beggar's Banquet, Exile on Main Street, Sticky Fingers. I bought all this stuff. I went up through the 70s. I already had Dirty Work and Undercover. I bought Emotional Rescue and Some Girls from the 70s. Tattoo You. I never had Tattoo You, and I bought that. You know, I filled all these in on the Stones. Haven't done that with these guys. It's like I like them, and it hits pretty good, but they really are a unique, you know, like a different taste. They didn't really morph so much like the Stones were able to do. It seems like what the Stones were able to do what was relevant at the time and then maybe innovate a little bit. These guys, I don't know. It seems like they had it for a while in an era when I wasn't there, so I can't really speak to, you know, how relevant and prominent they were, you know, from the early to mid-60s until 1970, 71. But they were riding the British wave, and then it went way off over here and over there. And I think Ray Davies should probably be proud of all that stuff he came up with, all the material. You know, if it was important to him and special to him, you know, here we are on the other side, and, you know, it wasn't commercially successful. You know, the guy did what he wanted. And then they did get themselves back into the mainstream, and they, you know, they got to tour, and they got to, you know, they put records on the radio, and that's the name of the game. Sold a bunch of records, you know, so good for them. But I think after all of that, you know, inconclusive. I like them very much, and they do have a handful of songs that are like way up in my my list of favorites. And you know, I thank Dave very much for that riff that Edward used, and also Where Have All the Good Times Gone, you know, similar. But yeah, they're one that, like, I don't know that I could, like, tell my friends they're into the heavy stuff like I am. Oh yeah, let's, you know, take a journey through the Kinks of the 60s and the 70s. You know, I think it just gets a little out there, and you got to really like them to follow that stuff, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, for me, they gave me some good stuff when I was in high school, and you know, when I went into the military, enjoyed them quite a bit. I think Ray Davies is probably an underappreciated genius. I think if you look at the videos, he had concepts of all these songs in his head, and he probably, you know, they didn't have the video era, you know, accessible to him to where you could do anything with it until pretty late in the game for them. But, you know, good for him. He made, you know, he was able to make some good stuff. And, you know, I'm glad Ray and Dave are still around. I follow Dave on Twitter, and he's got some pretty good informational stuff and old clips and stuff like that that he tweets out there. But yeah, the Kinks, what do you think of them? I'd love to hear what anybody thinks of this band, because it's that's the other thing. You know, I've done all this groundwork here, and I got these thoughts in my head. Don't really have anybody to bounce them off of, because I can't think of anybody I know that's a Kinks fan. You know, and they would essentially, the people I know would essentially say the same thing that I would have said before I did this. Oh yeah, you really got me. Whoa, you know, that kind of thing. So anyway, what do you think? If you got anything to say, you know, drop it in the comments. I'd like to hear it.